Meet Greg. Greg is the guy who actually keeps the company running. He works late, he fixes the critical bugs, and he knows how every system operates. And meet Brad. Brad is Greg's manager. Brad does not know how the systems operate. Brad's primary skills are sending emails that say, "Let's touch base on this," using the word synergy without blinking, and scheduling meetings that could have been an email. At 10 a.m., there's a massive call with the executive team. Greg, running on 2 hours of sleep, sits quietly in the background. Brad takes the microphone. He doesn't mention Greg's all-nighter. He says, "Leadership team, I'm proud to announce that we successfully synergized the back-end pipeline ahead of schedule. We are aligned for Q3. The executives nod in aggressive approval. A month later, Brad gets promoted to regional vice president. Greg gets a $50 gift card to a chain restaurant. If you have ever been a Greg, you know the absolute mind-bending frustration of this moment. You look at Brad and think, he is literally incompetent. How does he keep winning? Today, on Psychology Every Day, we are breaking down the psychology of failing up. We are going to explore the cognitive biases that blind executives, why hard work is actually hurting your career, and how the Brads of the world weaponize human psychology to steal the corner office. To understand why Brad got promoted, we first have to look at a dark, cynical theory of management known as the Dilbert Principle. You may have heard of the Peter Principle, which states that people are promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. If you are a great coder, they make you a manager, and you suddenly suck at your job. But the Dilbert Principle, coined by cartoonist Scott Adams, goes a step further. It states that companies systematically promote their least competent employees into management, specifically to get them out of the workflow. Think about it. If Brad was actually writing code, he would break the servers. He is a liability on the front lines. So where does the company put him? They put him in middle management. They give him a title where his only job is to talk, schedule, and organize, because talking cannot crash the database. Meanwhile, they cannot promote Greg. Greg is too valuable where he is. If they promote Greg to VP, who is going to fix the servers at 3 a.m.? This is called performance punishment. Greg's competence is exactly what is keeping him trapped at the bottom of the ladder. But wait, why do the executives love Brad? Don't they see that he's empty inside? No, they don't. Because of the confidence heuristic. The human brain is lazy. When executives are deciding who to promote, they don't have the time or technical knowledge to actually audit Greg's code or evaluate Brad's spreadsheets. They have to rely on a shortcut, a heuristic. In psychology, we often substitute confidence for competence. When an executive asks Greg a question, "Greg, can we double revenue by next month?" Greg, being a logical, competent expert, tells the truth. "Well, it's complex. There are variables. The market is shifting. We have technical debt. I'm not sure." When they ask Brad the same question, Brad, being blissfully ignorant of the actual complexities, smiles and says, "Absolutely. We just need to align our deliverables and push the paradigm." To an anxious executive, Brad is a warm blanket. Brad provides certainty in an uncertain world. The executives don't promote Brad because he is smart. They promote him because his unwarranted confidence soothes their own anxiety. They mistake his lack of doubt for visionary leadership. Let's pause Greg's nightmare for a second. If you are watching this and realizing that you have been playing the corporate game completely wrong, don't panic. You aren't alone. If learning the psychological rules of the workplace is helping you see the matrix, hit that subscribe button. We decode these invisible power dynamics every single week so you can stop getting passed over. Now let's talk about the biggest mistake the Gregs of the world make. Greg believes in a fundamental romantic myth, the myth of meritocracy. Greg thinks, if I just keep my head down, work harder than everyone else, and produce undeniable results, my work will speak for itself. Here is the brutal psychological truth. Work does not speak. It has no vocal cords. Brad understands the visibility paradox. Brad knows that in a corporate environment, perception is reality. Greg spends 90% of his time managing the work, coding, fixing, building. He spends 10% of his time managing optics. Brad spends 10% of his time managing the work and 90% of his time managing optics. Brad is in the break room chatting with the VP of sales. Brad is sending the weekly recap emails so his name is at the top of the inbox. Brad is presenting the slide decks that Greg stayed up all night to build. Executives can only promote what they can see. They don't see Greg sweating at 3 a.m. They only see Brad standing at the podium at 10 a.m. Brad is using the halo effect. Because he is visible, likable, and articulate, the executives assume he must also be technically brilliant. They assign Greg's hard work to Brad's charisma. We have to address the darkest part of this dynamic, the theft. Why doesn't Brad give Greg credit? Because Brad likely possesses high traits of Machiavellianism. A Machiavellian personality views the workplace not as a team, but as a chessboard. To Brad, Greg is not a human being. Greg is a resource. Greg is a pawn. Brad feels zero cognitive dissonance about stealing Greg's credit because, in Brad's mind, managing Greg is the actual work. Brad truly believes that because he sent the calendar invite for the project, he is the architect of its success. And if Greg tries to complain, if Greg goes to HR or the executives and says, Brad didn't do any of this, Brad has already laid the psychological groundwork. Brad has spent months building rapport with the executives. If Greg complains, Greg looks like a bitter, antisocial, jealous employee who is not a team player. Brad has successfully insulated himself with charm. So how does a competent person survive in a world ruled by Brads? Do you have to become a sociopath to get promoted? No. But you have to stop being naive. You must learn defensive visibility. Rule 1, stop being the silent martyr. You must start documenting your wins publicly. If you fix a massive server issue at 3 a.m., you do not wait for Brad to report it. At 3:15 a.m., you send an email to Brad, CCing his boss, saying, "Just wanted to give leadership a heads up that I have successfully patched the critical server failure. Monitoring it closely now." You claim the territory before Brad wakes up. Rule 2, learn to speak executive. You have to stop giving highly technical, anxiety-inducing answers to leadership. When an executive asks if a project can be done, do not list the 15 ways it could fail. Say, yes, we can absolutely hit that target, provided we secure X and Y resources. Give them the confidence of a Brad, backed by the competence of a Greg. Rule 3, stop being irreplaceable. If you are the only person who knows how the database works, you will be chained to that database until you retire. You must cross-train your team. You have to make yourself promotable by proving that the department won't burn down if you leave your desk. The corporate world is not a meritocracy. It is a psychological ecosystem. The people who rise to the top aren't always the ones who do the best work. They are the ones who understand how to make their work visible. Do not let a guy in a quarter-zip sweater steal your career just because you were too proud to play the game. You have the skills. Now, it's time to learn the politics. I want to hear your stories. Have you ever worked for a Brad? What was the most ridiculous buzzword they used to take credit for your work? Vent in the comments below. I read every single one. If this video helped you understand the madness of the corporate ladder, hit that like button and subscribe to Psychology Every Day.